Hi everyone, welcome to Marketing Ninja Unleashed. In today's episode, I've got another special guest with me. Today, I'm talking to entrepreneur Derek Thomas, who I met probably last year now, and we started talking a lot about personality types and various other bits. But today, I've got him on because he's written a book that I've been scribbling on. I've got loads of little notes on as well, and I've got lots of questions. So let's get into it. First, though, Derek, tell us a little about you.
Hi, thanks for inviting me on, Rena. Yeah, I remember that conversation well, and straight away I could tell I was speaking to someone who likes learning, someone who is all about personal development and growing people and bringing that confidence inside everyone that they don't normally start off that way. It's a slow process, and I'll chat about the process that I went through from starting off being someone who wasn't getting on well in school to the fact that he was eventually leading one, and some of that journey and a little bit about myself. Then uh, I had a very unusual upbringing. It was a bit of a dysfunctional family, I would say. There was a lot going on, and I won't go into the detail because it's all in my book. But I ended up being kicked out of school at the age of 11 because I wasn't really fitting in as they would like me to, and that meant then I was really quite a bit behind in terms of education and stuff. But the one thing that I think I discovered during that difficult period was that magic chemical of endorphins because I started to run. And I suppose in a way it was a sort of I just think it was my body saying, "Look, we can get you out of this," and that's what I did. I just went out to the streets and I was just running. I remember running miles and miles and miles, 10-mile runs and things, and coming back feeling amazing. And it just gave me that sort of sense of achievement, which I wasn't achieving anywhere else. And I think that was the starting point. Um, when you're stressed and when things aren't going well, I say to the children, count to 10, take a deep breath, breathe, breathe. And there's a lot in that because what you're actually doing is taking in oxygen, and that oxygen is stimulating the body to create chemicals that those endorphins make you feel good, make you feel better. And slowly, I started to get quite good at the sport, and I was doing more and more running, and I was winning things. And all of a sudden, I just felt that I was achieving, but also it was making me feel better. And in the end, my when I was reintroduced back into secondary school after being in a period of being supported, I decided, or my teacher decided, you should go into PE. And that was my very first link towards education. I was a bit far behind, really. I wasn't doing examinations. So I really had to do a lot of night school stuff. And in the end, I did get admitted onto a teacher training course in Cardiff. And I never looked back, really. I've sort of didn't end up in a tracksuit. I ended up in a primary classroom because art drama and sports were my thing. So I was more of a physical person, a doer, than someone who liked to dive into reading books, which is ironic because I've just written one myself. I'm not an avid reader, I would say, but yeah, I thought I'd put my story down on paper because I just felt there was a lot of things that I have experienced and gone through and overcome. I just felt that that was worth sharing with people because I'm a sort of someone, a personality who just likes helping people, and that's why I went into the primary phase because I just wanted to help kids maybe who hadn't had that great start. And I think I developed an empathy, an understanding of where they were and how to help them move forward, which at the end of the day, it's all about inspiring kids to achieve more than they think they can.
Definitely. That's really fascinating because you can tell there's a lot of your personal story in there. Now, I've read the book and I know the background of the story. So, actually, for me, understanding why you've written the book, why you ended up there is really makes complete sense. But for people that haven't read the book yet, I definitely recommend it, first of all. Um, but if you give us a quick overview of one of the things you do mention in the book is knowing your why. You've explained a little bit of it there, but what is your purpose? One of the main thing that you've just said there is you like to help people, and that's come across in all the different things that you do. Is that your main why?
I think one. I'll start off with this sentence. People often say your greatest pain becomes your biggest purpose in life. Trying to put right what didn't go well to have that as your purpose moving forward. I actually did that through education, and found my way where I was helping and supporting children. Um, but it sort of flipped a bit because when you are helping too many people and not yourself, that can start to build into a sort of a weight, a burden. And a lot of people go through burnout because they are so driven by helping other people that they sometimes forget to put that oxygen mask back on themselves. And it got to a point where I was doing a lot of bureaucratic work, things that paperwork, every child came with three or four box files. They all had to be managed, report writing, assessments, and running a school budget. I mean, it was a £2 million budget I was running, and I mean, I had a wonderful admin officer who I sort of dumped a lot of work onto her. Um, but I wasn't enjoying it as much as I was because I was away from the classroom now as a head teacher of the school, which is ironic, as I said earlier, because I was that disruptive child who was kicked out. Um, so I wasn't enjoying that aspect of it, and I suppose, I'd done 29 years, nearly 3 decades in education, and I just felt I was heading for a big fall. And so the reason the reason why I moved out of education was to give a bit more time back to myself, my family, because I was spending more time with other people's children than my own. And I think that point, that sort of light bulb moment when I remember coming down to breakfast one day because I'd already had a little side business going as well, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But I remember coming down to breakfast one morning, and my wife sort of turned to the children and said, "Children, this is your father." And I thought, yes, okay. And then there was a moment as well when I remember being in a governor's meeting. Um, I had a call from my wife, and she said my son was only 8, and he was in a dodgy part of Cardiff. They were playing football, and I was meant to be picking them up. And I was in a governor's meeting, and he was left on the side of the pitch waiting for me to pick him up. And I just thought, no, I need to do something about this chaotic lifestyle I'm living. And I made that decision then that I was going to exit. I was going to leave my main job and then work on that side business that I've been building quietly in the background. And that was the drive to move to the next phase. And I decided in the when I wrote the book, I talk about helping people avoid burnout, and there's some really dedicated people out there who are currently working 110%, and fully engaged in their work. But that's not always serving them. They're not getting that free time with their family. And my son has just left home. He's 27. He's just bought his own home, and I'm thinking, where did those 27 years go? It's like it's like a sort of a blink of an eye, and and sometimes I thought, people need to know that we're always aiming to achieve a goal, but when you get to that goal, you're thinking what you've lost in the meantime by not living, not doing those things with your family, not doing those things with your partner. And I think we sometimes forget that time isn't infinite. You get a short period of time on this planet, So you need to think more about how you're living and need to plan it better. And I just thought I'd share that in the form of a book because by doing what I did, by changing, and this is the point, people get into routine habits and they feel that they cannot change because everything's tied to their mortgage and they need that job and they've got to keep going and keep going. But there are alternatives out there. There are ways of generating something that can slowly replace and give people choices and options. Um, One of the things that I wrote in the book was all about, I was in the Peruvian rainforest, and one of the guides sort of showed us this tree, and it was amazing because it had this sort of root system that was above the ground. They looked like stilts. This tree was on stilts, and what he said was that this is a walking tree. And I'm saying, "No, what? A walking tree?" And he said, yeah, this is a walking tree. Basically, if the canopy becomes too dense, those roots act like legs and they will move the tree to a different position to get the light. And I suddenly thought to myself, well, if a tree can move when it's in the dark, so can a human. You don't have to stay in a dark place. There are things that you can do. And the biggest thing that stops people is fear of change. Your brain is designed to keep you safe.
It
Uh,
really is.
and literally, the moment you start thinking weird things, it starts to put you off because it wants to keep you in one place. And we talk about that, Rena, as like comfort zones. So how many times have you thought, "Do you know what? I need to get fit. I need to I need to go out and do some runs. I need to go out." And the moment you start, okay, it's raining out, or your brain will suddenly, you're now trying to introduce something new to your brain, a different routine, and your brain suddenly goes to work and it says, "Do you know what? It's raining. You're going to get wet and you probably catch a cold. I wouldn't do it this morning." And it will find ways of putting you off starting something new. There's a great book actually. Basically, you've got 5 seconds to react to that before your brain will trick you out of starting something new.
Okay.
And I call it 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And you have to really work hard to change a routine. So I do share some of that in the book on how to do that and how to do that successfully.
Yeah, I
But
get.
but the why, that's the why, I just wanted to get out of this this thing that was actually drowning me in bureaucracy and paperwork and stuff, and do something different that's going to serve me, that will allow me to do more travel, that would allow me to spend more time with my family. I mean, at the weekend, I went to see the Manchester City Arsenal Carabao Cup final, and I was able to do that because I didn't have to be in work the following day.
Yeah.
But also, Rena, I got time to spend with my son because normally when your children are 27, they don't always want to be with their parents. So in a way, I've found a little system that actually gets me to spend more time with him. So it has worked out really well. The kid that was abandoned on the football pitch, I'm now taking him with me to see some really exciting games.
That's good to hear. That's really nice. It's really powerful why, and understanding that, like you say, is really important as well because one of the things you mentioned earlier, which before we started recording, was if that why isn't strong enough and if it's not important enough, you do
Mm,
almost put it off. And that's where I think what you just mentioned then, your brain talking you out of things becomes really important, and starts doing its thing. It starts putting negative things into your mind. And I've done it before. I thought, oh, I'm going to join a gym. I'm not going to join a gym. It's too expensive. It's too far. I'm not going to commute. I know I'm not going to do it. Left it. I now have a treadmill downstairs in the living room because my plan is to start walking every day. That habit actually has changed, is changing. So I'm 2 weeks in and I have been using it every day, which is good because as soon as I get out of bed, my thinking is I need to get downstairs and get straight onto the treadmill because if I don't, and if I sit in bed for too long, that's it. My mind's going in the other direction. Like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll start a bit later. I'm a little bit tired today. I don't need to do it today. I'll get too sweaty and I just put it off. But I have been consistent and it does take time. But you're completely right. You've literally got that few seconds to think you've got to do it. You've got to do it now,
Yeah.
or your brain takes over and pushes you in the other direction.
And you feel amazing once you've done it, don't you? That those endorphins are kicking in. But here's a tip, Rena. Summertime now, just open the door, walk out, and appreciate the wonderful world around you in terms of find a nice walk or something where
Yeah.
you're taking in the sights, sounds, and that first one of the things they say that first light that you get in the morning is so powerful. Many of us, the first light they see is that horrible blue light coming from our mobile phones because we're checking our messages and our texts and stuff. But that first light that comes out in the morning really does set you up for a really energetic day. So.
Okay. That's interesting. I usually leave the curtains closed to be fair until a bit later in the day. So I will try that method as well from tomorrow.
Well, if the sun's out, it's an easy thing to do, isn't it? So
Yeah, it really is. We always try, so me and my husband both work from home. We force ourselves pretty much at lunchtime to go out for a walk. Now, we have to work around each other's schedules, so it might be a later in the day, but it's something that we've built in over the last
yeah.
few years. We've been married for 5-ish years now. For the last 2 years, we've been intently making sure we go out for a walk every single day just to get a bit of sunshine, but then also talk to each other. Like we don't use our
Yeah,
phones
yeah,
because it's been too cold to take the phone out, so that just lives in the pocket. It's been great and actually goes back to what you were saying about just finding opportunities to spend time
yeah.
with each other because we work from home, work across the hall from each other, barely used to see each other, and that's insane when we're in the same house. So actually having these little moments that you're intentionally putting in makes a huge difference. And
Well,
yeah,
that walk-in talk, actually, the moment you start walk, do you ever notice when you're walking, you get more ideas coming in? And that's the oxygen. That's the oxygen flow around your body. And often when I'm on a sort of an ergo or on a cross trainer, I get these. I'm thinking up talks to give, and the ideas come flooding in. And one of the tips I've sort of taken up is to record what I'm thinking because it goes once you finish. So yeah, yeah,
my
walk.
phone is filled with voice notes.
Yeah,
And to be fair, so is my husband's WhatsApp because it's easier to just press the button and send him a message. Makes no sense to him whatsoever, but I've just thought of this and I had to
yeah,
share it
yeah,
before I forget. Cool. One of the things you mentioned earlier was the business on the side. Now, it'd be great to share a little bit more about that because I know there's loads of people who might feel stuck in their jobs, in what they're doing, and actually you've talked about fear and how we overcome that. Having something on the side almost alleviates that a little bit and gives you a little bit more security until you're confident enough to jump all in, I guess. So tell us a
yeah.
little bit more about your side hustle, which isn't so much a side hustle anymore.
Well, it's not really. I mean, it's got into a big hustle because the company that I referred to is a company called UW, and basically we offer essential services, everything people use in their homes like energy, broadband, mobile, and because we combine them on a single billing platform, we can get really really good rates for people, and quite as of the past few weeks, with what's going on in the Middle East, energy prices have just soared in terms of what they're predicted. People have seen a little drop at the moment because the government price cap has come down, but I liken that to a tsunami. Okay, when that water goes back out, it recedes back out, and you're thinking, oh, the sea level's dropped and it's moving away, and then in comes that wave. And this is exactly what's going to happen now with the current situation. So I'm delighted. I've been helping people to protect themselves from that because most fixed rates have disappeared. We are still offering the only fixed rate, I think, in the market at the moment. I think there are one or two, but not at the rate that we're actually offering it at the price cap. So we've been busy with that. But so I like I mean, helping people reduce costs fits with my values, but also helping other people to set up a business that also helps people reduce. Uh, Sorry about that. I'm just going to pop this onto silent. Help, helping other people reduce helping people reduce other people's costs is the way that our business grows. So basically, is a business that leverages and helping train people get going, get started, and it's making a big difference in people's lives because most people, if they could bring in an extra 500, £1,000 a month on top of their current salary, they could be chopping down on their mortgage, or that could be covering, that could be going investing into an ISA for the future for their kids, whatever they need that for. Um, that's why I love what I do, because it helps on both sides, reducing costs and helping people generate income as well. And I generally love what I do because I left the classroom, but every single month I have a new classroom, a new group of people that we're helping to get started, get going. And so I've not left my teaching role. I've been able to find a way that doesn't have a lot of bureaucracy attached to it, which is wonderful.
Amazing. Okay. So one of the things I do want to talk about, and obviously I mentioned at the beginning, is your book. Um, the 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 reason behind it is really powerful, and it's great to know that all the money that's coming from this book is going to a good cause. So I'd love for you to tell me a little bit more about that, and just explain to our followers what inspired you to write the book and where the funds are going.
Yeah, I initially when I finished teaching, when I decided to walk away, within 2 months, I was in hospital. I was in intensive care because I had what I thought I was having a heart attack. But it wasn't quite a heart attack. But what they'd found is that I had a serious problem with my arteries that had been clogged up. My cholesterol levels were so high. Um, I ended up having six coronary stents inserted. So I've had all the plumbing done now. I'm safe. But for a lot of people, they don't even get that warning. So I set a goal, a big goal, a big health goal. And that health goal, I thought, right, okay, what's going to keep me going to the gym, keep me doing uh, the the training, and that was by putting a huge challenge in front of me. And what I decided to do was to climb Kilimanjaro. Everyone thought I was crazy. Everyone thought I was trying to kill myself. I mean, the first, killer man, is the first three syllables, isn't it? But no, I just thought, no, I would train. So I was training most days, getting myself fit, getting myself back into shape again, because I had this purpose in front of me that was to climb that mountain. And I was raising money for motor neurons disease at the time. And when I got back from the climb, we were staying at this lodge that looks after the climbers, and I heard that familiar sound of children playing. And I asked the owner, I said, "So I can hear children. What's that noise?" And they said, "Oh, there's a school behind." And as I looked across, there was this playground, these young kids playing, and it was a school, and the lodge funds the school. And they showed me the facilities and stuff, and it just reminded me so much of my experience in school and not having resources because we're often battling with resources. And I said, I think I can help you. Anyway, I took some information away with me and just thought, now how can I help these kids? And I suppose in a way, and I said, you'll find your greatest pain and you'll find your biggest purpose. And already then I found a way. That little 10-year-old kid who was struggling through school himself is now helping a group of children. And these children are orphans and vulnerable kids taken out of the community. So, that's what the school has been set up for. And I thought, I'm going to help these kids. One, I think I can help them to maybe improve the curriculum in the way that, with the onset of AI and artificial intelligence, they're going to be struggling in a world where a lot of jobs won't be available to them because they're going to be performed by bots and AI models. So I thought I would write about kids pursuing their passions in the book and going off and showing that maybe education isn't serving everyone in the way it should. And I thought if we could identify some of those kids' skills, we could show them how to monetize those skills. So an artist can now develop a website by just talking into an app, creating their own website to sell their pictures across the world. That's me thinking, getting creative and thinking outside the box, which is what I've always done. And I just thought, no, if I write a book about that and link it about changing direction, whatever you're doing in life, you don't have to stay put. You don't have to be that tree in the darkness. You can actually let your roots take you somewhere else. And so I put pen to paper. I went out on lots of walks, recorded a lot of conversations with myself. People thought I was batty, but you know. Um, and yeah, I'm not someone who reads a lot, but suddenly things started flowing, and I thought this is going to work. So I wrote the book, and I decided to all the funds from the book would go to the little primary school at the base of Kilimanjaro. And I found an organization that actually originally built the school, made a connection. A guy called Stan said, "Look, I want to put money into the school here." Told him my story, and he loved the suggestions I was making. And we had, the book's been out since November, but we were able to put about £2,000 into the school already. And they've got new chairs in their hall. And they're building a toilet so that can be used, that building can be used for the community as well, because they need an adult toilet and a children's toilet in there. And yeah, it's been a really, interesting journey for me. And that particular project I'd set as a goal to actually, when I first started my business, was to build a school. I wanted to build a school in an area abroad where they would benefit from having a structured education.
Oh, that's really inspiring. Yeah, it's a really lovely little story. It's nice that you almost come full circle, haven't you? You've gone from
Yeah.
where you were to helping other kids in the same sort of situation, which is fantastic. One of the things that you've mentioned a couple of times is the outside of the box thinking, from helping the school to actually understand that they can earn money to fund themselves as well, or raise or increase their funds. That's a not typically what used to happen. I know there's a few really lovely examples. One of the ones that I want just to ask you a little bit about, because it sounded like a lot of fun, was the wedding planning exercise, and I imagine that brought lots of excitement, and allowed the children who aren't always, I guess, top of the class in the academic side to shine through. So yeah, tell me a little bit about that, because that sounded absolutely lovely. And to be fair, if they're available to plan any weddings, I'm pretty sure anyone would take them up, because I know how much stress it was when I was planning mine.
Well, you know what you spent on yours, and I think it's the India. You're Indian, aren't you? Sort of background, yeah. So an
Yes.
Indian wedding is an expensive wedding because everyone comes, don't they? So
We had about 200 and yeah, about
yeah,
200, maybe a little bit
yeah.
over for
Most
our
people have
reception
university
wedding.
fees that spend a lifetime paying off, and Indians, there's about three generations to pay off the wedding of the century. Um, But yeah, I'm very much I focused a lot on experiential learning because I think a lot of learning is kids get bored, they're learning out of context, they don't understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. And sometimes we're switching kids off. Kids are very creative initially when they come to school and they're in their play areas, and they love play, they love interaction. And then as they get older, we stick them in a classroom behind desks all day, same uniform, looking at the board, copying things down, and wonder why they get bored, they stop enjoying it. And unless you're that inclined, the kid who wants to be out there playing football, rugby, or whatever, or hockey, are just staring out of the window, wishing, oh, when's this lesson going to stop? So I suggested to one of my staff, my teaching colleague at the time, before I became head, and we were doing a subject on religious education, and they were talking about promises. And I just came up with this idea. I thought, why don't we get the kids to organize a wedding? And she looked at me and said, you must be crazy. And I said, no, we'll marry two of the kids. And yeah, they've all been to a wedding, I'm sure. And she still thought I was crazy. So we got them into the hall, sat them down on the floor, and asked them. I had someone to scribe on a board and ask them their experiences at a wedding, what they saw happening. And they came up with all these jobs in roles and, videographer, photographer, the flowers, the speeches, and they came all these things. And I just said, right, okay, we put little markers about all with all these jobs. Go and sit where you'd like to work, and they all chose their chosen areas. And I just said one afternoon every single week we did the wedding, and they had access to the phone. They were organized. So one group had organized to go down to the florist. They got sponsorship from them to. They helped them make buttonholes and table flowers and bouquets, and it was just wonderful to watch children working from their own initiatives, and they're kids are creative. And you will see in the book where this vintage car arrives at the school. I had no idea that was coming, but to pick up the bride, and it was someone's uncle who that was part of his business, and he'd actually agreed to sponsor the event, and they got sponsorship. They did a sponsored walk. So the day of the wedding, we married two children, and they had a full wedding, and they were all involved in different aspects of it, and it was just so enjoyable. We had a book called The Wedding, which was in the foyer for many years, and then I think someone decided that would make a good memento, and it disappeared. Um, but during COVID, I actually this had happened probably about 10 years previously. And I decided to put all the photographs together as a sort of like a video. And it went viral throughout all those kids who were involved. And it was one of those moments where, they're in a bad place, they're stuck at home and stuff. And then they had this wedding memory to share, and they shared it. It literally went viral. So and I'm not suggesting you get married again, Rena, okay, but if you know anyone who wants to get married, we can do it for £250. How's that?
That sounds amazing. I will put the word out.
Yeah, yeah. But
But
those children were working in an entrepreneurial way.
mm,
They were I'm not even the disco. Okay, a couple of the guys they felt they wanted to be DJs or whatever. So I put him in contact actually with a friend of mine who is a DJ, and he took them under his wing. They did a survey of the songs. They created graphs to show which was the most popular ones. They
wow.
worked out how they only had 20 minutes for the disco, so they worked out how many songs they could actually fit in that period. And they were using key skills in there. But I think the beauty of this is that we had this sit down together where everyone in the group would sit down together on a regular basis, and they would throw out their challenges they were facing. We need money for the suits. We need this, or we need, and they would help each other out. So they would come up with suggestions and help each other out. So working not just as a group, but they were as part of a bigger team. And that had so much purpose behind it that it wasn't something made up. They were actually doing it. And yeah, that was probably um, the first time I ever thought these children are so capable if we give them the freedom to get involved in their learning.
That's really nice. Yeah, it definitely cements the doing things not quite the same way as everybody else. And actually, it helps you bring out different skill sets by just putting you in a different mindset, doesn't it? It
Yeah,
changes I need to learn this for an exam or I need to learn this for that when I to oh, actually, I get to do this because it's fun and I enjoy this. And you're doing the exact same thing, but different mindset completely, and it makes all the difference, doesn't it? But that's really nice.
Absolutely. I mean, we know that, you know, I had during the book launch that I had ex-pupils come back and they told their story about being in Mr. Thomas's class and the things that we used to do. And they said we always knew that there was something strange going on in those classes, and we always wanted to be in the class because they were doing something different. But I had one of the pupils is now an author. Another pupil is an entrepreneur himself. He was on Dragon's Den. He got money for this idea for these cinema pods he created in Cardiff. And another person, one of them is a performer on the London West End stage. You know, he was in one of the leads in the Book of Mormon. So they were all coming and sharing these experiences. But I often wonder how many of those children have gone on to become a florist or gone on to become a DJ or does that is that I mean DJs are some of the highest paid people around. You know, if you I'm told if you go to Ibiza and you've made it big there, you can earn good money. So but they're involved. This is the whole point. They're involved in things they're passionate about and that they're interested in, not being driven by their parents to say you have to go and do that because that's a teacher, a lawyer, a doctor. Because I'm sure a teacher and a lawyer and a doctor will tell you, I have no life. I am working flat out. I feel overwhelmed with resources and the time and lack of time with my family. So so yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And I think we have to think carefully now about the future, simply because I've met a guy called Piers Linney. Piers Linney is an ex-Dragon, and he was talking about the world of work and how certain jobs will disappear. He's created a company called AI OS. So that is an operating system that goes over a company that takes the calls, sends out the emails, and works the admin because it's being designed to work that way from the ground up. And those businesses, if you imagine the running costs of those businesses with those people who are still employing people to do the same job, the people who want their annual holidays, want to work only 8 hour shifts, want a certain salary, which comes off the which is added onto the end product, isn't it? Whereas those companies utilizing AI, yeah, with people managing that, will be far more competitive. And as I say, you've got to be using these systems if you now want to survive in the future. And I'm talking about, in the next 5 years, it's going to dramatically change.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's changed so much just in the last year or so, hasn't it? So where it's going to be in 5 years, definitely cannot imagine. Um,
Yeah,
it's definitely changed the way marketing's worked. But one thing it hasn't changed, and one thing that I guess scares a lot of people is the fundamentals of like what you do and knowing how to control it. The
yeah,
human side of it will never really change. You will always need human
yeah,
input. You will always need a story. You'll always need I guess, the emotional side of it, and that would be difficult to replicate. I
absolutely,
imagine.
absolutely. I taught Greener about take for instance art. If a child produces a piece of work that's made by human hands, that will be stamped to say made by human hands. That will become more valuable than some perfect looking picture that's been generated by artificial intelligence because there's emotion and value attached to that. And I always share the fact that and I keep forgetting the name of it, but ancient Chinese pottery was fixed, or China was fixed by sealing it together with a gold strip. And I, I don't know, maybe we can find out the name of that. I'm sure someone's screaming, yes, it's this. Um, but in doing that, they made that piece of pottery, that piece of china, more valuable. And it was the flaws in that cup or dish that was repaired that has added the value. And I think it's the flaws and the sort of imperfections of things we make by human hands that make that product more valuable, that painting versus, I call it art or artificial. AI is artificial, isn't it? So, and but this is why I think that human element you've just made is so important. The emotional story behind that piece of work or that idea.
Yeah. And I guess that's one of the reasons your book, you're telling your story becomes so important, doesn't it? Because we're going to lose that eventually. There are not going to be many people sharing their stories. A lot of it is going to be made up by AI, but actually AI cannot make up is the fact that you've been through this. You had health issues, you changed yourself, you changed your story, you gave yourself a goal, you worked towards that. AI can't replace that. It cannot replace your history, your lived in experiences. And
Yeah.
it's really, really important. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to get you on the podcast as well. Just because of everything that you've been through. It's a really powerful story that you have, and it's great to share it. And I just wanted to give you another audience to talk to as well. So thank you so much for being on my podcast.
No, it's been a pleasure, and thank you for inviting me, and for purchasing the book. I hope you've enjoyed it so far, and that it's useful. And if anyone wants to find out about my story or the book, they can go. I've got a website purely for that. Is derek-thomas.co.uk. They can find the story, find information about the book and the charity as well, particularly about the charity. And within there, there's a beautiful video that the school sent me with I think there's about 4 or 5 children about what they want to do in the future. And it was such an emotional piece. I played it at the book launch, and there were so many tears because suddenly, you can see these little young children who've got big dreams and ambitions, and it was a touching point. So they'll read all about that.
Amazing. I'll make sure the links are all in the descriptions, wherever you're listening to, watching this as well, so anyone can access those. But thank you so much for your time. That's been great. Is there anything else that you would like to cover at all, or anything else that you wanted to mention? We've kind of been through everything. I was just conscious of time as well, so I don't want to talk
Yeah, no,
too
I
long.
think I think we've got a lot. I think I need to bring out another book. So focusing on other things. But a colleague of mine said, Crumbs, he said, you've got so many themes in there. Each chapter could have been a book. Um,
Yes.
but I thought, well, I'm not someone who loves writing, but I basically voiced through. I had basically had conversations with myself on fear, on consistency, on transition, and it was just when I looked at that, that was easier to write it than starting from a blank piece of paper and a pen. And everyone is unique and has got a story to share, haven't they, Rena? And the purpose behind that book was more to it was to retell my story. Sometimes it's good to look back and see how far you've come, but don't look back too long. This we're always in a phase. We're either growing or shrinking. So keep looking forward, keep having aspirations, and and then one big thing I didn't talk about was it's okay to fail. I mean, most people think, in class, children under pressure, put your hands up if you know the right answer. And there are kids who won't put their hand up because they're not prepared to take a risk. And it's okay to get it wrong, and because by getting it wrong, you've learned something, haven't you? You've learned, you've made that mistake, or and then you're one step nearer to what works. And I think another reason for the book is that, sometimes people have done things, so learn from their mistakes as well, because that makes your route a bit faster. You don't have to go through the same pains and always, which is amazing, because there are so many books out there that you can learn from other people's mistakes rather than having to make them yourself. So I always find that's a good way of accelerating your growth by spending a little bit of time reading what other people have done and how they've done it and what to avoid and what to work on.
Yeah, definitely. It makes complete sense. And I was that little girl in school that wouldn't put her hand up because I was too afraid to get it wrong unless I was 100% sure. And I never was 100% sure, so I just didn't. But that's completely changed when you
Yeah,
become an entrepreneur, when you start working even,
yeah,
your mindset changes. You can't afford to just wait until you're right because
yeah,
you'll never be there and nothing will ever get done essentially. So my mindset has completely changed and now it's more of a there's no such thing as a silly question. I will ask as many questions as it takes to help me understand what I need to.
yeah,
Um, I will be the one that usually answers a question with either a silly response or the perfect response. I never really know, but until it's out of my mouth, no one will ever know. So
We we
it's
we had we had this experience in history where there was basically all the old buildings in Wales have been re-erected in this sort of museum. So it's like schools, houses through history. And how they've done it is absolutely amazing. But they would take a building down and lay, a bit like Lego, label each brick in position and then reassemble it in this place called St. Vagans, and they have an old schoolroom there. And so, as a teacher, you would go to a training where you learn to be a Victorian head teacher or a Victorian master. And the kids had to dress up. And the moment they got off the coach, you turned into this demoned head teacher and, checking their hands and making them sit in silence and all of that stuff. And it's a sort of scary experience for the children. But one of the things that when the inspector came to the school, the teacher had this scheme where if the children didn't know a date or didn't know a queen or a king or the when Victoria came to the throne, if you didn't know the answer, you put up your left hand. If you knew the answer, you put up your right hand.
okay.
So all the kids, when they're asked the question, all their hands went up. And the teacher would pick the one who had their right hand up, who knew the answer. So it was this like you don't make mistake, don't get it wrong, because his actually his income would have been um, uh, affected by kids not knowing stuff,
Mm.
which is crazy, isn't it?
It really is. I imagine the why back then was very different.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole thing on te intelligence that people think intelligence is related to how many A levels you have, what sort of degree you've got, and what you got in your SATs results. And the sad thing is, Rena, is that there are different types of intelligence. There's motor intelligence,
Mm.
okay. There's obviously the intelligence of course, the English, maths, writing, and when you see a gymnast performing those incredible moves, that's motor intelligence,
Mm.
where the body's learning to do certain things in a fraction of a second. But that is not seen as being intelligent. And it is a sad thing because you can actually earn money by running a gym school, performing at the Olympics. That sometimes I think we have a very narrow idea of what true intelligence is.
Mm.
And then again in schools, this is why I say all schools weren't serving, that creative intelligence that you have where people are very creative in what they do. And sometimes the arts are dampened down a bit because they're not seen um, as ways of succeeding. University's not suitable for everyone.
No.
We
Oh.
can and the wedding proved that. You if you're creative with your flower displays, etc., and you can look at things that they're putting different colors together. Well, that's an intelligence in itself, where you have this skill, and you can earn some good money from doing that. as you know, if you've ever bought a bunch of flowers. Um,
Thank you very much, Derek, for your time today. It's been fantastic having you on Marketing Ninja Unleashed. And it's been really interesting to learn about everything that you've been through and how your stories had such an impact on the world and still is having an impact on the world. I will make sure all of Derek's contact details plus a link to the book is included in the description. And if anyone wants to get in touch, I'll make sure his contact details are there as well. Thank you so much, Derek. I will let you carry on with your day.
Thank you, Rena. It's been a pleasure.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.